Hi, James. I'm excited to be here with you today. We have James from Magic Mind. How
John,
are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks
Excited
for
for
be-
that.
Thanks for being here. And for those of you who don't know Magic Mind, can you give us a high level overview of what you guys do best?
And if you don't know Magic Mind, you need to take a real long look in the mirror and ask yourself, what the hell is going on in your life? No, we're a tiny new brand, so growing fast, but but we just launched this year, and it is Magic Mind is, and for people watching, got a little bottle of it right here. It's a 2 ounce bottle of matcha, nootropics, adaptogens, and a little dash of honey, and it is in my own words, so verbatim from me, God's gift to a morning ritual, and about 7 years of tinkering and having to, because of a heart condition that I had. Uh, 7 years ago, limited me to 80 milligrams of caffeine a day. I had to make those 80 milligrams, or basically half a cup of coffee. I had to make that last all day. And 7 years later, I had this little formulation that really provided me like 8 to 9 hours of creative flow. It's whenever I think about Magic Mind and have to talk about it, I'm like, part of me thinks about it in terms of why I developed it. And part of me is just so thankful that I was able to make something that really gets me into a groove each day.
Beautiful. And I've been following your journey a little bit. You have your own podcast, you do some startup investing, and I find it fascinating how you transitioned from technology to health foods or direct to consumer food product. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey, the highlights, the learnings?
Yeah, it was really out of necessity. Like I said, I was in the ER being told I was drinking like 6 to 7 cups of coffee a day, and there was a voice in the back of my head saying this can't be sustainable or healthy, and um, I was running a company with 50 employees and just thought that I needed that to get through the chaos of the day, and then was in the ER after 3 weeks of heart rate around 170 beats per minute, and had developed a heart condition. And so, like I said, I had to figure out. My doctor was like, with your condition, you really can't drink more than 80 milligrams of caffeine a day. And I was like, what is that? 3 cups of coffee? Is that 4 cups of coffee? He's like, no, that's about a half a cup of coffee. And I was like, there's no friggin' way I can get through the day on half a cup of coffee. Um, and so he said this one thing to me that just sent me down this huge rabbit hole for the last 7 years. He said, have you ever tried green tea? It has this compound in it called L-theanine, which helps decrease your body's stress hormone cortisol. That caffeine will spike, and it will help. It will essentially just expand the body's absorption of the caffeine in the green tea over a longer period of time. So I was like, whoa, I can add this L-thea something to, or when you take it alongside caffeine, you get more out of that cup of tea or that caffeine. And so I was just like, what else could I and should I be adding to my morning cup of coffee or cup of tea? And 7 years later and 150 iterations, I had Magic Mind. And really 5 years later is when the thought even went through my mind about starting a company around it. I had to do it for me and wanted to do it for me. And in my own kind of entrepreneurial journey of really long days and creative work. And so 2 years ago, I was handing it out to friends, and friends of mine at Airbnb went kind of crazy for it. And we'd sold our company to Airbnb, and friends went crazy for it. And then friends within the Y Combinator network went crazy for it. And I was like, man, this is kind of like, if you have like Gatorade for athletes, this is Creatorade. And my entrepreneurial brain kind of just noticed, all right, there's something here. Maybe I should productize it in a really small, just the idea was a very small, contained way, like a 1 or 2 person Shopify type of company.
Super cool. And I love the product. I love the branding.
Yeah, you've tried it.
Yeah, I send you a note about as a software product, really looking at a lot of these direct to consumer brands, including your own, and like the whole unboxing experience, just it adds so much to the entire journey as a customer. So thank you. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
I remember that email that you sent.
Yeah.
And that was really that was very cool feedback, and thank you for how you do anything is how you do everything. So
Totally.
and I think people perceive that whether they know that or not. So if you're cutting corners on this part of the product or this part of the offering, then people will naturally wonder if you're cutting corners on this part. So we try not to cut any corners anywhere.
Yeah, and it's when you have a physical product, like you really have to, in many ways, perfect it. Whereas with software and with tech, you can kind of be iterative. We really want to build that surprise and delight into the product experience, but you sort of do it as you get feedback and as customers ask for it, rather than like building something, you ship it, then you don't have as much opportunity to maybe change the experience. I'm curious around.
That's true, but I would advise to not get too mired or addicted to the incremental, to the
Okay.
iterative feedback, because a lot of customers won't say, "Hey, I would really love some surprise and delight at
This
checkout."
point. Yeah.
At receipt. They often won't think of that because by definition it's meant to surprise them. So make sure that I have been in that mode where it's just, oh, we have these 19 different things we need to implement before we get to the fun stuff. And playfulness is such a powerful part of the product experience.
Totally. Totally. It's just like those two camps, right? Like Steve Jobs, you don't know what your product, better than your customers about what they want. And then the other approach is like, lean startup, MVP, being iterative. We can geek out on that. I'm curious right now about, you mentioned the matcha and the green tea and how your doctor presented those to you as like alternatives. What was the journey like to discovering other superfoods that you have in your product, such as some of the medicinal mushrooms that you have in there? I think you have an herb called rhodiola in there. Can you tell us about how you discovered those and how those added to the product formulation?
Yeah, sure. And dude, I'm a total stan for rhodiola. Rhodiola is great.
It's nasty on its own though. It's like
Oh
pretty.
yeah, dude. Oh, that was
Intense.
the hardest part of developing this type of product was how do you make a drink with all of these things that taste decent. I'll never say we're going to win some flavor award, but how do you make it to where it tastes decent? And it is also really important. I mean, to your question, everything's surrounded around what is the absolute best morning ritual drink if you were to design it, the best. And I didn't care if it was $13 a day. I just wanted to know what was the best and then work backwards from there, because maybe the best isn't going to be the most commercially viable. We were lucky in that we were able to get all of these things in a very commercially viable drink. We don't have the best margins, but I don't care. All day long, our FP&A consultant will tell me that we need to improve our margins, and I just don't. We're not going to compromise on making the best product possible. And the reason it needed to be in a drink, by the way, side note, is that liquids have a absorption rate of 90%, of up to 90%. If you take a pill or a powder, a pill is anywhere from 30 to 50%. Powder is anywhere from 40 to 60%. So if you take a pill, it might be the recommended dose. That might be a great dose of turmeric or ashwagandha or rhodiola. And if you're only absorbing 30% of it, then what's the point? And it also the absorption rate for a pill is about 40 to 60 minutes, and absorption rate of a drink is about 20 minutes. So it was like, how do we, in your morning ritual, in my morning ritual, I want to get into flow very quickly. I don't want to just sit, wait around in an hour. And I also, if I'm gonna drink something or ingest something, I really want the full effect. So within the whole realm of nootropics or nootropics, the pronunciation's kind of it is interchangeable, or adaptogens or medicinal mushrooms. It was really just went back to what would be the best morning ritual drink. We've been drinking coffee for 400 years. The 21st century will probably introduce something that incorporates, what we know scientifically and what we have access to globally. And what would that drink look like?
Very cool.
Does that answer your question? I mean,
yeah. I think where I stalled is I think a lot of folks don't even know what nootropics are. Could you give a high level overview of like what nootropics are? And
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So nootropics. I say nootropics. Nootropics are, and by the way, I wrote before launching the product. I wrote a book on this whole realm called Beyond Coffee. That really just was all of the learnings. It was meant to be an ebook, but then the publisher made it into a physical book. But it's very simple read. You can read in like 45 minutes. But the book was just basically a dissection in my own journey of like, okay, there's stuff that's total hype and bullshit, and we just scientifically is not very real for improving productivity, energy, cognition. There is stuff that is might benefit you but is unsafe, and then there's stuff that's both safe and scientifically proven to be effective for productivity. Nootropics, and that covers nootropics, adaptogens, or medicinal mushrooms. They all can be incorporated towards improved productivity. But nootropics specifically is cognitive enhancing. So if you zoom out and the way that I think about productivity, it's energy, yes, but if you have one too many cups of coffee, everyone knows that like jitteriness that's the antithesis of productivity. So it's energy, but it's also cognition and balance. So de-stress. So you can have energy, you can have focus, but you're stressed out, like you're only worried about X instead of being productive on Y. And so as productivity really came down to energy, cognition, and balance for me. And so within those, that's a decent breakdown of, you have things that nature and science give us for energy, but cognition, flow, or focus, memory, those things would be in the nootropics camp. So cognitive enhancing compounds. And then adaptogens would be anxiolytic compounds, things that decrease stress, decrease just the pervasive low-grade anxiousness in our modern world. And mushrooms can help with that as well. And then you have the medicinal mushrooms that kind of help with energy, or cognition and focus, but in slightly different ways than something like caffeine.
Totally. I love mushrooms and kind of just geeking out on the fungi kingdom. There's so much out there, and I think there's also so much we've yet to find out. If anyone's interested on that topic, I recommend a documentary called Fantastic Fungi. Right. That really follows the story of my mycologist, Paul Stamets, who's also like an OG in this whole world. I'm curious, James, around, you mentioned your entrepreneurial journey, how that coincided with some level of like burnout and your heart condition, and sort of this like epiphany / transition in terms of how you energized yourself. I'm curious whether that came with other lifestyle shifts or changes that you've held up today in terms of living maybe a more balanced and healthy lifestyle.
Yes, definitely. In fact, I'd say all of these compounds that you can take in a pill, powder, or drink really should be fifth on the list of one's own personal audit of things to kind of go through and see where you could make maybe some incremental improvements that add up to a really much more productive day, week, a month. And the first would be that I have discovered in this path towards, I say productivity, but really I just mean like finding a groove in life. The first thing is sleep. So sleep within that realm, that's the foundation for everything else. It doesn't matter like how much someone meditates or has access to an amazing, energy elixir. It doesn't matter if you are getting 2 hours of sleep a night. It's just like none of that matters. And so within sleep, the pro tip that the best pro tip I ever got within that bucket was wake up every morning at the same time and set your body's 24-hour circadian rhythm. The second bucket is diet. So sleep, diet, exercise, stress management, and then these external compounds. But within the bucket of diet, there's so much information out there, and a lot of it can conflict, or every 5 years it changes. There's a really, really funny or die video. Maybe you've seen it, but it's like a family in the 50s, and the wife is making eggs and steak. And this guy comes from the future and is like, "Don't eat those eggs. Eggs will jack up your cholesterol, blah, blah, blah." And then the guy leaves from the future and then comes back. He's like, wait, I was wrong. Okay, you can eat the whites, but don't eat the yolk. And then he bounces and then he comes back. He's like, okay, we figured it out. You actually can eat the yolk. And then he comes back. He's like, don't eat the steak though. The steak is terrible. And it's just kind of like a complication of how often our the science and understanding around diets change and how disorienting it is. Very funny video. So I try not to focus on the things that change or could change. The thing that I will tell you, we scientifically do know, is that alcohol consumption before bed, in terms of your approach to diet, will crush your sleep, the first foundation. 2 drinks of alcohol can ruin your sleep can decrease the sleep quality by 24%. 3 drinks will decrease your sleep quality by 39%. Basically, wow. Having your sleep quality. It's like, thinking you're getting 8 hours of sleep and you're only getting 5 and wondering why you feel like shit the next day. And so within the bucket of diet, the best pro tip I ever got was to limit alcohol consumption before bed, ideally nothing. Third bucket is, do you want me to go on? Is this interesting?
No, I love it. It's something I'll say about the sleep stuff is like, I've also heard about like some people will use cannabis for sleep, but I think it's Matthew Walker, the sleep scientist, talks about it, is like even that will disrupt your REM. And I've even heard that caffeine after like 2 p.m. I don't know if it includes Magic Mind, will also sort of destroy your sleep. I personally, like, I can tell now that I've been like tracking my sleep a little bit with my Whoop band. I've been seeing that the nights where I dream more, my percentage of REM is a lot higher, which has been interesting.
Yeah, so Magic Mind will actually improve your sleep, and I shouldn't say will. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
But can improve your sleep, and that's from the acetylcholine in there that can improve REM cycle sleep. And you take it in the morning, but it actually can improve your sleep quality at night, and things like cordyceps mushrooms, which will increase. This is way too much information for.
No, I love cordyceps. Cordyceps. Everyone out there, if you're listening, go out and find some cordyceps mushrooms. And if you haven't seen, there's like this Nat Geo video of cordyceps mushrooms. I don't know if you've seen that, with like they basically like fight against ants, and like they grow outside of ants. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is it's a wild fungi, and the cordyceps mushrooms, which is in Magic Mind, is it produces what's called ATP, which is the body's fuel currency. And so as your body produces, it takes 6 to 7 days for it to really start to reach full effect of taking cordyceps or taking Magic Mind. But as you produce more ATP, you require less sleep, you have more fuel currency. A side note about caffeine is that not only will it disrupt sleep quality, and the suggested time is 2 p.m. is when you should stop, because it has about a 6 hour half-life. But you still that means that half the caffeine is still present in your body 6 hours later. But the Caffeine doesn't give us any energy. It just blocks the neuroreceptor that tells us we're tired.
Mm.
And it actually is, it doesn't get, it's like instead of fixing the engine and producing more ATP, which is the actual body's fuel currency, you turn off the check engine light and you're like, no, I fixed the engine, I'm good to go. When we drink caffeine, we turn off the check engine light that says we're fatigued, we're tired, but we're not improving the engine in any way. But things like cordyceps mushrooms or strength training exercise can improve ATP production. So it's that cordyceps in the drink will can allow people to not require as much sleep. People report that where they're getting time-wise less sleep, but better quality sleep with a Whoop band or with the Oura ring. So you should try that next time you try Magic Mind, see if it does, if you are getting better quality sleep. But so that's in that diet bucket. That's alcohol is the biggest pro tip there. Exercise bucket, the biggest pro tip there is that out of all of the freely available antidepressants, exercise is shown consistently to be the best to improve mood. 3 bouts of strenuous 20-minute aerobic exercise per week that has scientifically been proven to boost mood on par with any other antidepressant that's been tested. And that's just
Unbelievable.
It truly is unbelievable. Another interesting factoid is turmeric has also been shown to be as effective as Prozac as an antidepressant. Prozac is about $1,300 a pound. Turmeric is like $3 a pound. And that was shown in 2013 and 2016. But there's no commercial entity pushing turmeric like a company that spent $5 billion to create Prozac. These things are this science is well understood and freely available for people to find these things out, but it's obviously a lot of work to find these things out. But the exercise one is really key. It'll also improve sleep quality. So it goes back to the previous foundations of this kind of hierarchy of productivity. And then fourth is stress management. And within there, breath work. You could Google 4-7-8 breathing. And that is one of the best stress relievers that we know of. And it takes about 2 or 3 minutes. I am a meditator. I'm a advocate for meditation, but in terms of like consistency over intensity, what's something that someone could bite into today and is really easy to jive with for months on end. Breath work is phenomenal for that. Gratitude journaling is also you can do that in 2 minutes each morning. And then I would say fifth in line would be, okay, what are these exogenous compounds that someone could consume to get into flow or productivity, whether it's caffeine or whether it's some people are prescribed pretty hard stuff, or anything that's in Magic Mind.
Yeah, they're all tools in the toolkits, and they all have like their specific purpose. But I think getting the foundations down and then layering on things like Magic Mind is you'll be in a good spot. I'm curious, James, what are the most maybe out there or crazy or unique things that you do to maintain your well-being outside maybe of the fundamentals?
When I was going to make a joke. I won't.
Let's hear it.
Well, this was going to be the joke, Jonathan, but I was going to say every time I take the life of an animal, I feel like I gain extra strength. But that's a very stupid joke.
Well, I think there's something to be said about hunting. Like I haven't gotten into spearfishing or any sort of hunting of that kind, but I have a friend who talks about, he doesn't eat land animals and he only eats seafood, and it's because he goes and does spearfishing. And when he goes spearfishing, he can really experience the entirety of nature. After he, is getting into the guts and taking them out, birds are coming in. There's flies all around. You throw the carcass back in the water, and there's other fish that come through. So maybe there.
That it certainly it would raise our compassion for animals to see and experience that whole whole process instead of being 1,000 miles removed. But I don't do too many crazy things. That's why I was kind of thinking of making a joke. Is I don't think I do too many crazy things, and that's because I'm a big proponent of consistency over intensity. Anything that I'm going to take on, and that was the impetus behind writing the book around a sustainable guide to nootropics, adaptogens, mushrooms, was because there was so much information out there around things that would give you like an 8-hour jolt, or you'd feel great for 3 days, but then you'd feel like shit for 2. And my whole approach was if I'm going to do something once, I want to make sure that it's something that I can do where day 70 is better than day 1. Day 700 is better than day 70, not these little sprints. And I think that stems from a bit of a viewpoint around productivity should be measured in months and years and decades, and not where I used to think productivity applied to minutes and hours and what can you do today, and in kind of a younger self. So everything that I do today, it's I wake up pretty early, but at the same time every day. We have a 5-week-old newborn, so the last 5 weeks has been
Congratulations.
a little more, thank you, a little more erratic than usual. But that, and then I meditate for about an hour.
Wow.
And so maybe that's
Every day?
every day. And maybe that's a little bit out of the ordinary, but it's not. But even that is like, it's driven by, I was able to consistently do smaller portions, and then fast forward. Our dad taught us to meditate when we were like 8, so I've been meditating for over 20 years. So that's certainly not, sounds intense, but it started way less intense before it ever got to that point.
And is there a type of meditation that you're doing? Is it transcendental? Are you doing it by yourself without an app?
I was taught transcendental, but the type that I practice now is either studying. I'm a big fan of this philosophy called Vedanta, and I talk about it on my podcast. This is podcast, by the way, Below the Line. I talk about it on the podcast quite a bit as a philosophy that sits beneath the surface of my entrepreneurial creative path. But so it's either an hour of study of Vedanta, or it's just sitting still and breathing, and not transcendental, not Vipassana, but just sitting, breathing, and kind of just clearing the mind. Naval Ravikant taught me that from within Silicon Valley, and it's a great way to get to mental clarity and kind of mental inbox zero, to just let whatever thoughts come, and 20-30 minutes in, they kind of stop coming.
I love it. Yeah, Naval, I've listened to Naval talk about that, and I found his approach kind of refreshing, because he doesn't even call it meditation. He's just
Right.
like just sitting without my phone every day consistently. And I think it's so fascinating how these companies like Headspace and Calm have built, billion-dollar industries teaching people how to sit down and breathe. I think they have a lot of, they're creating a lot of value in terms of getting people to have more emotional awareness, and a lot of their focus actually has transitioned more and more. I've heard from people that have worked in and around the companies to sleep, because that's when the usage of these platforms is so high. Is like people have the most trouble sleeping, and that's the first thing that you said when you talked about those core foundational pillars.
Yeah, it's the foundation for everything else. And if people take anything away from this conversation, it should be wake up every morning at the same time and set your 24-hour circadian rhythm. One of the most destructive things we can do for our productivity, for our days, to wake up this morning at 6, this morning at 11, this morning at 9, this morning at 6:30, and our biological clocks to release melatonin to help us go to sleep, to release cortisol to wake us up. It gets completely out of whack when you're throwing all of these different times to it. It does not get into a true rhythm. And so, if you've ever wondered why when you sleep in till 11, you still feel like shit the whole day, it's because you've basically just sent these crosswire signals to your body on what what time it is and what's going on.
Sure. I'm curious, James, what are your favorite health and wellness brands outside of your own, outside of Magic Mind? I look at it from the perspective of, our company and employers subsidizing products and services for their employees, and also thinking about what the leaders of these companies themselves are using on a day-to-day basis and what they're deriving the most value from. So whether it's like companies that you drive the most inspiration from in terms of companies that are doing well from a branding or customer experience perspective, or products or services that you use on a day-to-day basis, maybe that fit in that fifth bucket that you mentioned, that are just like the cherry on top in order to keep you juiced up every day.
Yeah, two that come to mind is I love drinking matcha tea. Matcha really is kind of like nature's time release caffeine, and it's great for that groove and even feel throughout the day. And I love two brands, Incha and Matcha Kari, are awesome brands, and very cool teams behind them. I know that I just know what I'm getting with that, and building a food product. It's been really enlightening how it's really kind of opened my eyes on how many shortcuts you can take and how many shortcuts you're kind of encouraged to take as a creator, from the bottler, from a food scientist, from the margin perspective, from the competition, from the pressure to do XYZ for the business versus the product and customer. So I really look at the teams behind these products to say, okay, I'm ultimately putting my trust in them. Matcha Kari is awesome. Incha is awesome for just matcha instead of coffee. And then I love Huel, HUEL.com. And that's I have some right over there. And it's just like it's kind of like Soylent. It's a meal replacement drink that has all the vitamins and minerals and nutrients you'd want in a meal. But for that kind of meal on the go or just in between meetings, if I want something really quick, I had it for breakfast today because I was recording a podcast episode, and it's just, I know what I'm going to get is really healthy and much better than another convenient option that might be unhealthy for me, might have kind of like a cost on the other side. So those two are the biggest ones. And then really, I don't use a whole lot of kind of health products or health and wellness kind of products. One thing I actually will say is for lower back tightness after working out, total godsend is A System. It's all one word, A System, which is a portfolio company of mine. I'm an investor, but they came out with this as like their fifth product, a CBD pain roll-on, and it's a really high quality CBD that they use, and it's kind of like icy hot plus CBD. And I don't think I really subscribe to the effects of CBD. I never really felt them, but holy hell, is this pain roll-on one of the best products I've discovered in the last year.
Well, oftentimes it's not even the CBD, I think, in those products. It's like the essential oils that they accompany it with, whether it's like peppermint.
I've tried icy hot and different rubs, Tiger rub, and it wasn't as effective as theirs.
I'll check it out. I recently tried a product called Feals, Feals, which is a direct-to-consumer company in the CBD space, and it's really good. I was the first time I've like tried a CBD product, and I actually like felt the relaxation and the effects.
Are you talking CBD, CPG, D2C?
Exactly.
I think Feals is all of that. A System is all of that.
Random question for you is, now that you've had experience operating two startups or maybe more, and you're also investing, how has that impacted or influenced how you and what you look for in founders and companies when you're on the opposite side of the table and you're looking to get some skin in the game or invest in a new startup?
Yeah, that's a great question. Warren Buffett has a quote that being an investor makes him a better businessman, and being a businessman makes him a better investor. And I think that's spot on, that being an investor and thinking through critically different businesses that you're, really disconnected from, your identity isn't tied up into it, really refines the lens that which you apply to your own business. Or when I was thinking of Magic Mind as an entrepreneurial perspective, it really did check all of these interesting boxes that I look for other businesses. And the boxes in my head as an investor are, and it's part of it is conscious framework. Part of it is just with companies that really succeeded in my portfolio, that did really well. I would then go back and kind of see, okay, what did they get right? And I've been was really fortunate with a handful of winners early on that I could look at and say, wow, this is what I really should look more of. This is what I should look for, less of. The first thing is the product right off the bat. I think that with D2C specifically, or CPG, that I think that you got to start with the product and then go to the founders. With tech, with software, because I also invest in software startups, it's the reverse. It's founders, then the software. But for a consumer products goods company, it's product, founders, growth, and their understanding of growth. Then it is the brand universe that they're building, and then fifth, it's space. How big of a space is this? So, like Halo Top, as an investment, when I looked at it, it was something where I was like, okay, this product is awesome. It's low calorie, and a whole pint of really tasty ice cream, low calorie. That's really interesting, and that's very inventive. The founders, really smart, really process oriented founders. Their growth, they had stellar growth, but they also were meticulous in understanding their growth. They would do some really clever things online to map to where they were growing the retail business offline, so that they would have this overlap. Really, really smart things, to where it's like, all right, not only they're growing fast, but they have a really interesting insight on how to grow. And then fourth is the brand universe that they were building. That was a really cool brand that they were building. And actually, when I invested, they had a previous brand, but I saw what the brand was going to become as this fun, light ice cream brand that felt just kind of more modern. And then fifth was the space, and healthy dessert eating was a space that was not big then, but it was easy for me to feel like, okay, people wanting desserts, that's massive. And people wanting a healthier version of a pint of ice cream, that's growing and going to be massive. So that was kind of the checklist, and it is the checklist today.
Super cool. I love to see so many magics. I love the word magic in front of mind, in front of spoon. I have this vision of creating my own product one day called Magic Stick, which is the future of connected fitness out in nature while you're on a hike. It's basically uses electromagnetic waves like tonal to increase the weight, and you basically like hold on to it. It counts your steps, it gets your heart rate, and then you could do different workouts with it. So you get to the top of a hill after you're like using this walking stick, and then you can squat with it and that. So
Cool.
maybe that'll all be in the Magic family one day.
It's a growing and pretty solid family of founders that like the word magic.
Yeah. James, this has been awesome. I'm curious to see whether you have any other questions for me or anything else you'd like to add. I definitely think folks should follow you on Twitter, on wherever else that you're active, as well as check out your podcast Below the Line, and especially Magic Mind if they haven't heard of it already.
I got a handful of questions for you, Jonathan. Maybe I'll keep them offline, but yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and it's a really cool company that you're building.
Thank you. Talk soon.
All right, talk soon, buddy.